Hi guys, so today we're checking out the MP Concepts tailgate reinforcement and oversized spare tire carrier mounting bracket kit fitting all 2018 and newer JL Wranglers. So if you have upgraded to an oversized tire, a larger wheel and tire for your JL, or you're looking to do so and you need some extra reinforcement and extra strength to your tailgate to carry that larger tire around, this option by MP Concepts is going to be a great choice to take a look into. Now, a lot of the time when you add a lot of weight to the back end of your Wrangler, especially your tailgate, it does tend to sag over time and can even wear out the tailgate over time. And something like this is going to reinforce those hinges, making sure that that does not happen and supporting all of that extra weight that comes with a larger wheel and tire. Now, this option by MP Concepts is going to be pretty lightweight as well, made of an aluminum material as well as a steel material. So it is going to be strong, but it's not going to add a whole lot of weight to the back of your tailgate here. Now, this will also reuse the factory spare tire carrier, unlike some other options that will come with one. But what I do like about this is that it's going to come with spacers and brackets that will move the tire up about an inch and out about an inch. So you are getting a little bit of an adjustment there to accommodate for an oversized spare and to accommodate for different offsets and back spacing when it comes to upgrading your wheels as well. Now, overall, this is a very inclusive kit. It comes with everything that you need, and it's going to add a lot of strength and even add a nice touch or an off-road look to the back end of your Wrangler in the meantime. Now, the other thing that I do really like is that this is going to come with threaded holes on the tailgate reinforcement itself, so you will be able to add a bracket or two as far as accessories are concerned if you are looking to add anything to the reinforcement or the tailgate itself. Now, when it comes to pricing, this is going to come in at roughly $350, and I personally think that's a great price for what this kit comes with. Now, there are other options available on the page that are going to be set up a little bit differently, but will be generally the same style as this reinforcement kit that you see here. Now, this one is going to bolt over the hinges, and it's going to be reusing your factory spare tire carrier. Some other options will be complete replacements for the hinges themselves or add extra brackets for the hinges, and then some other choices will come with the hinge reinforcement as well as a new carrier. Now, again, with this, you are saving a couple bucks considering you'll be reusing your factory carrier, and this is just going to bolt over the hinges but still be very durable in the meantime and very strong in the meantime. So in my personal opinion, I think if you don't need all of the extra bells and whistles, but you are looking for a strong reinforcement and a little bit of extra room when it comes to an oversized tire, this is going to be a great choice. Now, when it comes to install, I'm going to give this a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. This isn't that hard to install. You will need a little bit of time. I would say about 2 hours worth of your time to get the job done, and some pretty basic hand tools. So speaking of that install, let's jump into that now. The tools that I used for my install were an impact wrench, a 3-inch extension, soft pry tools, a 21 and 13 millimeter socket, a T55 and T30 Torx socket, a 6 millimeter Allen socket, and a pair of snips. So the first step here is to obviously take off our tire. So in order to do that, we do need to take this cover off for our backup camera. For this, you're going to need a T30 Torx bit. You can use the one in the JL toolkit, or you can just grab a T30 Torx socket. All we have to do is just unlock it, pull straight back, and then we'll be able to access our lug nuts. Now, for the lug nuts, if you have factory ones, you'll need a 22 millimeter deep socket. However, we do have a 6-spline lug nut, so I'm going to use the key and a 21 millimeter socket. And we can just remove the tire. So for this install, we will need to take off our carrier, but there is a wiring harness that's connected to the inside of the tailgate here. So what I'm going to do is pry off this back cover using a soft pry tool. We can unplug those, and then we can get to removing the carrier. So this is just going to pry right off. Put that to the side. And we're going to have a couple of wires here. Now, the top 2 are the ones that we need to address. So all you have to do is just press down on that and pull back. So once the cover's off, we'll see all of the wiring harnesses back here. Now, the top 2 are the ones that go into the carrier. So we're just going to press down on that and pull back on both the top one and the middle one. And then once those are disconnected, what we can do is close up our tailgate, and we'll come back to this after the carrier is installed. So now that the tailgate's closed up, we can pull on this grommet here and wiggle out those wires that we just disconnected. And now that those are free from the tailgate, we can start to remove our carrier by removing the 8 bolts that are surrounding the carrier that are holding it in. I'm going to use a 13mm socket in my impact wrench. I'm also going to use a small extension just to give myself a little bit of room. Now just be mindful of that last bolt because the carrier will come off. And we can move that out of the way. So now that we're at this point, what we can do in order to free up some space is to remove the factory isolators. We also have new ones in the kit. Those will depend on your tire size, but we're just gonna pop these out for the time being, and we can reinstall them later if need be, if we don't need to use the new ones. Now what we also need to do to make room for the spacers and the brackets that are going to be attached to here is trim this little vent. Now we're going to have to do it on either side, on the outer part on either side. We're going to take off this little tab here and just a little bit of this lower portion of the tab. I'm just going to use a pair of side cutters and we can just snip that right off. What we can do now is remove the 4 bolts that are attaching our hinges to our tailgate. You want to make sure that obviously the tailgate is closed for this because it will be disconnected on this side when I do take these bolts out. But you can use a T50 Torx socket or Torx bit in order to take these out. Now these usually do come with paint on them, so if you're having a hard time getting the socket or the Torx bit into the bolt there, you can just use a dead blow and just tap it in a little bit. We've taken these off before, so it should be pretty easy if you don't have any paint there. So what we can do now is grab the main bracket that is going to be the reinforcement kit. We can also grab our provided hardware that we're going to install with this kit. It's going to be the button head hardware, and we're also going to need a washer. You're also going to have spacers. These are going to sit in between, right inside of that space there. So what I'm going to do first is get these bolts through here and get the spacers on. So now that we have the spacers and the bolts in place, what I'm going to do is just line this up carefully with our tailgate and use a 6mm Allen socket, and we can start to thread them in. Now if a spacer falls off, you can just pop it right back on into place. Makes it a little bit easier. So if the tailgate does drop a little bit, you can just grab a soft pry tool. I recommend a thicker one, and you can just pry up to align the tailgate with the hinges. And again, we can just continue to give this a good hand tighten. Then once they're pretty much hand thread it in there, we can grab the impact wrench or a ratchet and we can tighten those up. Next, we can install the spacer and studs. Now this is going to give you a little bit of space between the tailgate and the carrier itself, and then we'll be able to mount the carrier to the studs here. So in order to attach this, we're gonna lay this over the reinforcement for the hinges. And we're also gonna have a spacer for the other side to make sure that it's evened out. We're gonna take the provided 13mm bolts and the washers, and we're just gonna thread those into place. I'm gonna start with the two that are on the hinge reinforcements, and we can slip our spacer behind here, line that up, and we can get that installed. Now before we tighten that up, we're going to do the same thing with the bottom, and then we can go back and tighten all of our bolts. As you can see, this overlaps here, and that's why we had to trim it. Now what we can do is take a 13mm socket. We can just use the one that we used to remove our carrier, and we can tighten down all 8 bolts. What we can do now is add our small spacers onto the studs here. Now these will line up with the bracket. You're going to have specific top ones and specific lower ones, so just keep that in mind. They're going to go along with the line of the other bracket as well. Now once those are on there, we can grab our carrier. So then we can grab our carrier once those are on and can line it up with our studs and push it into place. So now that that's in place, we can grab our provided hardware, which is going to be the flange nuts that are provided in the kit, and we can thread those on. So now that all of those are on there, we can use that same 13mm socket that we used before to tighten all of them down. Now that the carrier is back in place, we can put our wires back through our tailgate, pop this grommet in, then we can open up our tailgate so we can reconnect our wires. We can then plug our wires back into place, making sure that that red locking tab is secure and they're connected. We can grab our trim piece for the back of the tailgate, line it up, and give it a good push to pop it back in place. So our last step to this before we put on our tire is to add our isolator. Now you can reuse the factory isolator if this is what fits with your specific tire. However, this does push out the carrier a little bit more, so you will have a little bit more space, and that's where the provided isolators or bump stops come into play. Now again, this is going to depend on your personal setup, your tire size, as well as the back spacing or offset of your wheel. Now you can trim this at each of the these divots here to fit your personal application. I'm just going to reinstall our factory ones, but again, this is going to be very useful to just make sure that the tire is sitting up on the tailgate snug, not rattling around, especially when you close the tailgate. So again, you will have to cut this to your tire size, and you can just measure that out with a standard measuring tape. But for the time being, I'm just going to pop in the factory ones. So our last step is to put our tire on and secure it down. Pop our cover back into place, take our T30 Torx socket and make sure that's locked. And you're all set to go. So that is going to wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos and products just like this, and always keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.